I do believe that collective impact is basically saying when there are lots of people working on something in lots of different ways, which we have in spades here in Charleston, we need a way to focus that energy and drive it and make sure there's some coordination and make sure that there's some connection about it. The same is true of virtually any situation. Creative Mornings, perfectly great example. A whole bunch of volunteers come together because they believe in something. They want it to happen. And they find a way to distribute all of their activity and all of their efforts so this is happening. It's happened over and over again, and it's been good a whole bunch of times. It's worth it. To move from the individual to the collective can be scaled literally one person to small group to multiple groups together. But I'm leaning on first and foremost, it has to start singularly. If this one doesn't start, those many almost can't. But once we have some aligned around a thought, aligned around a feeling, willing to risk as a group, we also have to make that the other groups find a way together. This fear that I have of separation, this thing that I work against, is exactly the foil that we're overcoming when we do that. And the only way to do that is to communicate, and is actually to connect. And I'm gonna go way out on a limb with this crowd. This is communicating. This is not necessarily connecting. This is communicating. This is not necessarily connecting. Connect. Connect. Let's go there.
This gentleman here is going to come up and shake you up a little bit. Please welcome none other than John Zinsser.
So I got to start completely off script. The professor's piece. I think the very first public talk I ever got to give was on pop culture in Tokyo. So I'm putting what Ivan said together with what the professor had to say. And it was actually in that room that I first realized who I loved most and who I was going to get to marry and spend the next 26 years with. So, and as I started thinking about the feeling I wanted at the end of this, I wanted the feeling of that room all those years ago in Tokyo. I don't think I'm going to get there. Do you have 20 minutes to save the world? To change the world? Do you have 20 minutes for that? Because I do. When I started thinking about this, I started thinking, what could I talk about that's risky for me, that's different from me? I wanted this to be a little off my regular. So should I talk about something I don't know anything about? Should I talk about something that would make us all really, really uncomfortable, something we'd really have to struggle with? Or should I talk about my own condition, my own crises, my own problems, something that's really torn at me over the course of my life? Or should I talk about something that, I don't know, we might be able to do something about fairly quickly? And what I decided was, yes. I wanted to talk about all of those in 20 minutes. I hope you'll come with me. Struck by lightning 3 times. The small boat I'm sailing from Marblehead, Massachusetts to Halifax, Canada, has no power. Engine's gone, batteries dead, lights, everything gone. That means all the thousands of dollars of equipment that we have on the boat to tell us where we are and where we're going don't work. They're just dead weight. There's 50 miles an hour breeze going on, which means there's this whistling sound in your ear all the time. Lightning is the only light we have. And some of the bolts are going off so close to the boat, you can hear the water sizzle. Somebody tell me why this isn't risky. Anybody got a guess? Why is that not risky? Either my telling you or the story itself. Anybody?
So you're here now?
Say again?
You're here right now?
Because I'm here right now. Thank you. I did that speech last year. That's the opening to my TEDx talk. I did that sale 35 years ago. I was a kid. You don't get to do risk twice. Risk can never be the same thing a second time. That story was risky once. That sale was risky that day. If I did that race again, it's not the same risk. I have the experience. Even in the context of a game where the rules are pretty clear and pretty simple, filling the inside straight in poker, hitting double sixes in backgammon just when you need it, dropping a three-point shot with 1 second to go in a basketball game, none of that is the same risk the second time. You can't repeat risk. You can only do it that first time. Let me ask you something. Was it a risk for you to come here, right now? Did you think about it long and hard? Or was like, bing, I'm going. If you thought about it for a long time, what changed for you as the time went by? If you just clicked it, what was the reason for that? Did you know why it was instantaneous? Some people would say that you never get to make that choice without some kind of knowledge and input. If you know Creative Mornings, either because you've been before in Charleston or maybe in one of those other 138 cities, just did the math, you know what you're getting offered. Maybe that's what helped you make the choice. You know Yvonne and this whole team and what they put together. Maybe that's what moved you through that risk. Because there are people who would have loved to have spent a little more time in bed this morning or do something else. But I gotta say, I'm standing here looking at the sun on the water. It's a pretty wonderful thing for me. Or was it my trustworthy picture that they kindly put up on the website? Did you know anything about me, and did you have any clue what I was going to talk about other than the word risk? Which, let me tell you, having wrestled with it for about 2 months now, it's a big word. There's a lot to it. But what went into your choosing? I raised the team and Yvonne and myself because I think the ultimate risk, perhaps, that we all have to deal with as human beings is who do we choose to trust? And maybe even more importantly, how do we choose who we're going to trust? Is there any more human risk than that? But it turns out we're actually really bad at risk as human beings. We're actually not good at all about figuring out what's risky and what isn't. Let me show you a couple of thoughts. You're going to Yosemite this summer. Congratulations, you're off to Yosemite for a vacation. And I want to ask you, which of these is riskier to your vacation? Bears or buffalo? Left hand, bears. Right hand, buffalo. More people are killed every year in Yosemite by buffalo than bears. I had no idea. Which is riskier, this giant summer tornado or your backyard pool? Left hand, tornado. Right hand, pool. Oddly, the pool is so much more deadly than the summer tornado. In fact, more people will die in pools this year than will die from tornadoes, bears, and buffalo combined. Why do we think that way? Why would we think that, ooh, the tornado is less frightening than, the pool? It partly has to do with how often we hear about it, and unfortunately, drownings are so common, they don't write about them in the newspaper anymore. You can't go online and see late-breaking coverage. But that tornado hits and you know what's going to happen. We're going to get a 24-hour news cycle about it where you're going to be force-fed it whether you like it or not. That affects how we think about this. That affects how we think about everything. So we have to start to wonder, how do we measure risk or think about risk or track it? How can we possibly give it a score, a weight, or a measure? And it is one of those things that regardless of how you do it, and you're going to do it in a few minutes, you make it up every time. It's a very human process. But one of the things that's so cool about risk It's concept, it's a verb, and it's a feeling. And if you don't get in touch with that feeling of risk, those 3 stories that we heard, there was a feeling to those moments. I don't know as you're living. So in one sense, isn't the true measure of risk life itself? I want to go back to the coming here part and talk very specifically about that. How did you get here? Anybody walk? 1. Thank you. I'm very glad. Did you stay on the sidewalk? Did you walk in the crosswalks? Did you be very careful with that? Did anybody bike?
Yes.
Couple, yay, more. Good. Helmet? Little flashy blinky thing? Right. Did you take the same route you would always take here? Did you think about a different way and the risk that might be involved in coming here differently? You could have come down the park. You could have come down this street. Could have turned there. Think about all the things we do to control risk. The sidewalk, the crosswalk, the helmet, the blinky thing. Does anybody drive? Yeah, yeah, right. I won't let the Charleston Moves people know. But think about the Jersey barriers, the stoplights, all the road signs, the police. Aren't they all there as supposedly risk mitigator? Look around. Did anybody have a different risk by driving here than you did? Look at each other. I'm going to tell you absolutely it did. With all that we do to try to protect risk, some people get risk choices when others don't. But think about those things that we do endlessly to try to protect ourselves from the risk of walking or biking or taking the wrong route. And think, what if you didn't have that choice? Some of you have probably seen these numbers recently, and if they don't scare you, they ought to. This is the numbers from roughly the last 4 years. The state of South Carolina has something they call a non-citation traffic stop. It's when they stop people but don't give them a ticket for something being wrong. North Charleston is number 1 in the state, going away with 146,000 non-citation traffic stops. It's easier to say than I'm making it. Over the last approximately 4 years. Charleston is second at 125,000. The next closest city, which is roughly the same size as Charleston, is Columbia. They do it 33,000 times. Wait a minute, what? 125, 146, 33. Right there we've got a problem. Line 2, the percent of stops where the driver was black versus the percent of the city population that was black. What if the risk you are running into is something you don't have any control over? Somebody's taken that away from you. Think about it. Feel it. That means for somebody driving in Greenville, South Carolina, the risk is 1. It's a standard. In Columbia, the risk is actually less than 1. It's only 88% likelihood. But if you're an African American driving in Charleston, you're 2.7 times more likely to be stopped for a non-citation violation. And if you're in North Charleston, it's 4 times. And it's actually even worse in Mount Pleasant, but I didn't want to put it on a slide. Damn serious effect of risk. What would you do if you were 4 times more likely to be stopped? Would you have come? Would you have stayed home? Would you run that risk? I wanted to give you a slight different graphic representation on it. Look at those numbers. They're doubled for the youthful categories on the one side. But this interesting thing happens at the age of 76. We stop old white people more than we stop old black people, which I don't really know what it means, but I just found it fascinating. It's a turnover. I don't know why. Take the keys from your older parents. But this has to have you think. You've got to wonder, about what it's like to live with risk every single day that you don't have any choice in. I didn't have to get on that boat to go to Halifax. I didn't have to make that speech in Tokyo. But what if you just have to run that risk to live, to spend every day here? Brian Stevenson was here just a few weeks ago. Brian runs a remarkable outfit that reaches back into court records and tries to get people off of death row who they feel were wrongfully convicted. He had 4 really simple principles for overcoming inequality in America, and the first one was get proximate. Put your hand on those who are injured. Get close to the problem. Get close to the struggle. He felt that that would change your viewpoint. And I have to absolutely agree with him. If you put yourself at risk, and if you put yourself with those who are at risk, you change. Your viewpoint changes. When you hurt, when you take a risk, your entire perspective changes. When you can read the bottom line, but you can also translate it as fat, dumb, and happy, and I tend to be so almost all of those. Your perspective shifts. There is, of course, risk in connecting with people. Standing up here, making a public speech is risky. For some people, it's the most dangerous thing in the world. For me, it's kind of what I do. I kind of like it. But to connect with someone is always risky. To connect with the world can be highly risky. And I mean the world in an environmental sense. How could we be here on Earth Day and not at least mention it? Think about that, to get connected to your environment. The world of belief and faith, I struggle with that connection. I struggle with that connection hard. I had to say to my minister recently, I'm not sure I believe, and I'm not sure God wants me to. That was a risk. But I'm really glad I took that risk, and it'll never be the same again. Connecting with feelings, your own or others, with the pain that's actually out there, that's hugely risky. Connecting with beauty, I have stood in this very building and cried over something that I've seen on one of these walls. Honestly, I've also cried at Hallmark commercials. But wait a minute. What about the risk in separation? What about the risk in being separated from each other? What about the risk in separating from our environment and our world? And I can't stand here looking at this and not think, wait a minute. What if that body of water, and you should look, Yvonne tried to ask you to, you should really look. What if everything that they say is true, and I believe it to be so, and that's going to go up a foot, and another foot, or a third foot? What is that risk going to mean to us right here? And it might happen inside the next 50 years. I'm unlikely, but you all are highly likely to be seeing that. Belief and faith? What about being disconnected from that? What about being disconnected from God? And that can be a lot of different gods. That could be the God who is good orderly direction and keeps you clean and sober. That could be the God who died for your sins, or the God who got your tribe up and out of Egypt, or the God that moved that mountain closer to Muhammad. Or that could be God, Gaia, this planet, our home, this place. Are you connecting in any way to any of that, or are you separated from it? And how does your risk change because of that? Are you separating and defending yourself, isolating yourself from feeling, from hurting? Have you kept yourself from beauty? I hope not. Because you all are the designers, the artists, the authors, the builders. I hope you take that risk to stay connected to beauty. But it strikes me that today and going forward, the risk of separation is so much greater than the risk of connection. From now on, I'm going to challenge you. Take the risk of connection. Let go the risk of separation. We need that. We need connection like this in Creative Mornings. We need connection with all of those different things that I was just talking about. We have got to find a way to take the risk of connection. Separation is no longer an acceptable risk. We are, in fact, the only species who, by consistently inflicting upon ourselves separation, has the chance not only to end our own species, but all species. Talk about risky business. Think about it. Every form of violence is effectively a type of separation. Dylan Roof stood a mile from here and inflicted his sense of separation on 9 other people. Walter Scott and his broken tail light 10.7 miles from here. His tail light was out. His light goes out. That was a form of separation that ended in violence. Every form of violence is a type of separation. And I need you to stop that, because you're the only people who can do it. There is this general theory that changes for communities, for companies, for big groups only start in one place, one person. Think about it. No town like Charleston or any place else instantly makes a change. They don't instantly take the risk to overcome their separation. It starts with one person. It starts with one line. It starts with one thought. We have separated ourselves from each other forever. We can't keep doing it. That's an unacceptable risk. So that's why I'm putting the challenge to you all. Again, authors, designers, artists, connectors. With what you do, you weave us together. You find a way for us to connect. I'm challenging you all to keep going with it. Go even bigger with it. Because truthfully, connection is greater than separation. Are you at a place where you're ready to bloom with this? Are you at a place where you're willing to risk and grow and be even more beautiful to realize that connection? I'd like to see if we can find out. You all should have gotten a beautiful blank, pristine card. We're going old school. For those of you who can digitize on your phones, whatever, please, feel free. But do me a favor, right across the top, and do it this way. Stand it up, that's vertical. Thank you, took a second. Right across the top, I need. And I'm going to teach you a risk management equation in 1 second. You've got I need across the top. ABC, right across, DE, across there. I'd like you to write just a sentence for each of these, or a few words. I need. What's something you need to take that risk? What's something you need from yourself first? That should be A. What's something you need in B for this town or your town? It may be Charleston, it might be Mount Pleasant. It may be the town you moved from in Minnesota, or where you started with that van when you and she got together and moved here. Wherever it is, pick a place, a political entity. What's something you need for that place? We've talked about it. It's Earth Day. C, something you need for the environment. D, something you need for that spirit, that connection. And I come back again and ask you to do it again, because it's never the same risk twice. Something you need for you, from me, big me. I'm going to give you all the time you need in about 1 minute to do that. And the leaf blowers gave us white noise. So most risk management is actually done in the negative. They ask you to determine the cost and then multiply it by the likelihood of a bad outcome. That to me seems like a bad risk to take. I've flipped it around for you and gone for an opportunity rather than a risk score. I'd like you to just look at each of those things that you wrote down from A to E and give it 2 scores between 1 and 10, 1 being not so good, 10 being wow. What's the likelihood of the desired outcome? What's the possibility in your mind right now that it could happen? 10 is absolutely, it's already happened, or it's happening. I'm in the midst of it. 1 is, I am kidding myself. And then I'd like you to multiply it by the quality or the quantity of the benefit you think would happen for you and for others if it did. 10 being, yippee, everybody's going to go home with cake and cookies. 1 is going to be, well, it's not so good for everybody else. So just do a little quick multiplication. Your score is going to be somewhere for each of those 5 things between 1 and 100. And if you score 500, we should talk. And if you score 5, wow, we really should talk. Math's not my strong suit, so I'll give you about 30 seconds to do all of that. So look at your scores. What 3 things can you do? You could pick the 3 high scores because that might be really rewarding. You might take the 3 low scores because that's the kind of person you are. You want to take on the big challenge. You could take the high, the middle, and the low. But change what you write now from I need to what you can do about it. What can you do? What risk can you take to affect that? Jot it down. It should be roughly the same thing as written in A, but just reframed from I need this to I can do this about that. I can take this action, or I could take that action. Give yourself a guideline. You had no idea when you arrived the risk you were taking. Got it? Close? Maybe almost, kind of, sort of? Turn your paper over. Put it on the other axis. Great, big, startling letters. I will. I will. Across the top. You can go back and forth if you have to. But look at one of those cans. Look at one of those cans and turn it into I will. Write it down that way. I will work to keep the ocean lower. I will do something to change the risk that the people of color in my community are facing at the hands of their own police force. That's mine. May not be yours. Think about the one that squeezes your heart. Think about the one that hurts your head. Think about the one that tightens you all over. Pick something. Write it down. Write it down. Got it? Hold it up. Hold it up. Hold it up. I can keep saying it. I'm going to say, I will. You are all going to say your thing. We are going to declare the risk we are about to take to everybody in this room and to this world. I'm going to say I will. You're going to say your thing. I will. It might have sounded like a mishmash to you. Standing here, it washed over me. It feels like hope. Do me a favor. Risk it. I'm not going to grab the Nike line, but I prefer it this way. Risk it. I want to say thank you for giving me these few minutes to talk with you all. And Yvonne said we should have some time right here for some questions. Thank you.